Bro, if you show me another Spencer Pratt clip, I'm going to literally put you on a rocket ship into outer space. Do you understand me? I don't give a fuck about Spencer Pratt, dude. Jesus Christ. Who cares about that dumbass, dude? Are you fucking serious?
Democratic here. Because this is, the Democrats should be doing well. But look at Becerra, 29%.
What the
Republican, 28%. Look at the separation there between Becerra and Steyer.
So, as you probably know, last night was the highly publicized jungle primary election in California. And as it currently stands this morning, it is generally looking pretty good for Republicans and bad, frankly, embarrassing for Democrats, especially the far left ones like Hasan Piker that we will discuss in today's video, because it looks like their beloved billionaire, even though they're socialist, didn't really do all that well. Now, that said, I don't want to say anything definitive or get ahead of myself at the same time, because you obviously know this is California, which means despite the fact that the math currently is trending pretty well for the Republicans, you can fully expect, in fact, predict, know for a fact we're going to have random ballot dumps, mail-in votes coming in over the next month or so. We already saw shades of the 4 a.m. ballot dumps last night. It's basically, imagine your PTSD from 2020, and that is every single election ever in the state of California. Although I would point out on the flip side that maybe there is some reason to believe we can still hang on and, don't despair just yet. Because, for example, although last night in the LA mayor's race, it was looking like, oh no, here come the late night ballots, Ramon's gonna end up beating Spencer Pratt. In the end, if you actually followed very late into the night, about like 4 or 5 a.m. Eastern time, Pratt actually began to start surging and expand his lead. The reason for that is because the counting order of votes in California makes no sense. So basically they counted mail-in and then election day, and then it all came together, but there's still election day, I guess, to be counted. Nobody knows what is happening. And see, in a normal state, you would generally think, and by the way, it does often go this way, that there is an ordered nature to counting votes. So you count them, for example, in the order that they come in. So first, early voting, absentee, then election day votes, then maybe some outstanding provisional and, shady other absentee ballots that come in at the end, which frankly, I still have questions about. But usually that's why we can look at an election based on early voting and say, okay, this seems to be trending in a certain direction. Of course, that makes sense. That is logical. California's voting system on purpose, there's a reason why they do it, obviously, but really has no logic or rhyme or reason to it. And because it's intentionally created to be chaotic, that's part of the reason why we can't really look at election results all too definitively. And that is exactly the point, right? There's obviously a reason why Democrats want to leave room for weeks of counting and mail-in votes and all this nonsense. But nonetheless, I guess today let's react to the results as they currently stand. Now, we'll hold off on talking about the LA mayor's race maybe until our next video, because that sort of is a little bit more still up in the air, although Spencer Pratt is trending once again to appear to be the favorite. But what does seem a little more definitive, about, let's say, an 80% chance in California, is that the top Republican, Steve Hilton, will advance to the general election. As a matter of fact, as it stands right now, he is actually leading in first place. Not sure it's going to end that way, if you know what I mean. But at the very least, and as it pertains to Tom Steyer, who is, of course, the far-left socialist billionaire that, for whatever reason, despite being a billionaire, has the support of a bunch of far-left people. I know, make it make sense, right? Well, this is, the Democrats. Actually, despite spending some $200 to $300 million on this race, kind of embarrassingly collapsed when it all came down to it. And Hasan Piker and many other leftists last night had a live meltdown that we will react to and talk about here today. So let's break down some of these early election results. Again, it's going to take time to actually be sure about this, but right now it's not looking good for Steyer. And nonetheless, the fact that he burned all those resources and for a time was in first place and just totally collapsed, in this case, to a total mediocre lightweight in Xavier Becerra as the top Democrat. I mean, still, nonetheless, a humiliating performance, I would say, on many levels. And by the way, again, it may just be pure optics or whatever. I get it. He only has 28% of the vote. But the fact that a Republican is in first place in your own primary really just is not a good look, let's be honest. Let's get into all of it, though. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. That is the best way to support our work, and it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And that said, as we take a look at the current results, Hilton with 28%, Becerra with 25, Steyer with 20, with 58% of the votes in. Some margins are too close to call, obviously, but just the way this has been trending, it doesn't seem like Steyer has a lot of room there, but, you know, we'll find out. However, take a listen here to the full-on meltdown that Hasan Piker had about this last night because, well, it's just pretty entertaining content, if we're being honest.
Democratic here, because this is the Democrats should be doing well, but look at Becerra, 29%, Republican 28%. Look at the separation there between Becerra and Steyer. I think that's the most significant we've seen so far. And then Chad Bianco running back there at 10%. Boy, if you're Becerra, between what you've seen so far, right here. Sorry about that,
bro.
Right here,
this is not just a disastrous outcome for Tom Steyer so far. This is a disastrous outcome for Javier Becerra. Okay? Do you understand how fucking insane this is? I mean, Sacramento should not be split between Becerra and the Republican, dude. What the fuck? Oh my God, it is so black pilling to see. Oh my God, Spencer Pratt cleaning up. Oh my God. If I see 40 in early numbers, I will Brian kill me.
I'm Brian Kill Me.
If 40% early voters or not, if I see 40% for Spencer Pratt at any point, I might just combust. The real black pill that I received was this, okay? 28% for Spencer Pratt early on. It's now that there's a Republican at the top of the ticket, they're going to come out and fuck high ass numbers. Spencer Pratt now has a better opportunity. The stupid 870-year-old that like signaled to get the Republican into the top two in the runoffs might actually lose her seat now because it's going to draw turnout. It's all down ballot from there. Night started off incredible with a massive W and is ending with disastrous outcomes for my state. I really, really, really did not want Steve Hilton to be in the top. I did not want a Republican to be at the top in the top two runoff because it's going to do tremendous numbers for Republican turnout, and it's going to have down ballot consequences, which is going to fuck redistricting efforts.
I mean, it's just too good, isn't it, folks? Now, admittedly, Hasan Piker is correct about that. It will have good down ballot effects for Republicans in California if the results of tonight do indeed hold, which frankly, Hasan is a lot more confident about than I am. You know, I guess he's a naive leftist who doesn't actually pay attention to how elections work in his own state. But still, nonetheless, yeah, it is true. And especially when you look at the redistricting efforts that he mentions, it could be the case indeed that, you know, we dealt a major blow to them actually tonight by simply showing up to vote, which I'm very proud of California Republicans for doing. As one example, there was actually a congressional district from last night that Democrats appear to may have dummy mandered themselves out of, which is to say, you may remember Gavin Newsom did the whole referendum. They're drawing 5 new Democrat seats. However, there were so many Democrats running and only 2 Republicans. The Republicans were organized. And currently, right now, as it stands, the top 2 placements are Republicans, right? First place is a Republican, second place. Now, I'm sure mail-in ballots are going to come to fix that, but if that somehow does hold on, it would actually be the case. Republicans basically stole a Democrat district from them because these idiots thought, oh, we're going to draw these districts and they're going to be open. Yay, Democrats go. And then they forgot how the jungle primary system works in their own state, and this could be a possibility. Whether or not that stands, I don't know, but still, again, central conclusion, even if they catch up, even if they do the mail-in stuff, optically, I would argue, especially the rest of the country having gone to sleep last night and just having not really cared, oh, the Republicans are up in California. Yeah, it makes a statement for sure. Now, that said, let's also talk about those very governor results, because you're probably kind of wondering, wait, you said Hasan Piker supported the billionaire? How does that make sense? Well, let's actually take that justification from his own words and sort of break down this race for you. So his argument, you can see, is in his own words, is that Becerra is a, quote, exceptionally weak corporate stooge. Now, you're probably looking at that and saying, wait, so the billionaire, according to the Socialists, is actually the good guy? Isn't their entire political identity being against billionaires? And the answer is yes. So now you're probably likewise thinking, wait, so doesn't that not make sense at all? Isn't that kind of morally inconsistent, hypocritical, whatever words you want to put on it? The answer there also is yes. But in like just typical left-wing fashion, I don't know how else to put it, the far leftists last night, the absolute in Hasan Piker says cattle, so I guess that metaphor kind of is actually appropriate here, but just with a sheepish mentality that they have said, oh, we're gonna go get behind the billionaire because we're leftists, guys. In the same way, every single time you notice that the far left base kind of coalesces around the very type of people that they claim to hate. And let's actually break this down in good faith, because I know what they have argued about this, which is that, oh, well, Steyer is the good billionaire. And their case for that is Steyer, when you kind of break down his campaign platform, is arguably the most far left guy in the race. Yes, he's someone I do not actually want to have in power. And that's just simply true, right? He's running on, he basically, all the other candidates are saying, oh, well, we don't want ICE. He's saying we should arrest ICE and like do all this crazy stuff. Okay, yeah, he's the furthest left candidate. I will admit that. And the argument progressives make is basically, oh, well, he's the good billionaire. Like, yeah, he may be a billionaire, but he's going to advocate for our cause. He believes as a billionaire that we should raise taxes on the rich, and he says he's completely fine with paying more taxes. And okay, I get all of that, right? You're basically saying, well, but on policy, he's going to be the best. Here's my thing, though. You are the very people who claim that it's immoral for billionaires to exist in the first place. I just steel-manned your argument too. I admit it. Okay, I understand your rationale. Oh, well, ideologically, he's the most far left. But your whole moral framework is that if you are a billionaire, basically, right, what do they say? Then you had to have exploited people along the way, right? Because capitalism is wage slavery, all these things. You took advantage of people, blah, blah, blah. And that's why leftists walk around with slogans, for example, on the signs like, there's no such thing as an ethical billionaire. So no, I would still point out, it doesn't actually make sense for you to say, oh, well, this one is the good billionaire, because according to you people, there are actually no good billionaires. No, you actually do look stupid doing this. I know you can do all the mental gymnastics you want, and in some cases they did work, but I'm sorry, I still don't think there's a way around it. You can't claim that billionaires are unethical and then say you're going to support the billionaire over the non-billionaire. It just doesn't actually make logical sense. And, supposedly if he's such a good billionaire, right, okay, and he wants to raise taxes on himself. That's what he's promising everybody. Okay, why doesn't he give up the money now? Why doesn't he go donate it? He talks about the wealth tax. Well, regardless of whether that passes, why isn't he giving 5% of his wealth to the state right now? So that way he can go, donate that to illegal alien healthcare and all the things that leftists love so much, mass welfare fraud and all of those things. He's not doing that, right? But you champion this guy as your hero, it just doesn't make any logical sense. But after all, these are leftists we're dealing with. I mean, do we expect something like ideological consistency? No. Truthfully, these people don't even have an ideology, okay? They're basically just resentful losers who want to tear down civilization in spite. And however they'll get there, they'll get there. So usually that means calling out the billionaires and, trying to ride this populist, far left, Marxist wave, I guess, to an extent. But then, when push comes to shove and they're like, oh, well, the billionaire will help us further our, okay, we're behind the billionaire now. We love Tom Steyer, we love George Soros. What a bunch, but this is what we're dealing with, right? But anyways, all of that in mind, so Hasan Piker's meltdown is not done. He proceeded to refer to California last night as California, basically saying, oh, all of the leftists, all our liberal state guys, what is wrong with you guys? You have sheep brains, what are you doing? Now, I'll be honest, I also frankly believe that probably a big reason Steyer lost is because, we hope, is because he is a billionaire, right? You know, maybe not all the people who listen to Hasan Piker, but, you know, are just liberal leaning, probably thought to themselves, oh, well, I'm actually against billionaires, so I'm going to vote against the billionaire, right? You know? So who is actually the cattle here? I don't really know the answer to that question. Again, it's not my fight. I think you guys are both idiots for different reasons, but just going to say that. On top of that, it's of course California, which means you're talking about a heavily Hispanic state. Maybe it was inevitable to an extent that some Hispanic candidate was going to rise through the mix of these, awful, horrible people. And by the way, I'd point out too, perhaps the funniest aspect of it all is that when you actually break down the sort of numbers here and you consider the fact that Katie Porter, I mean, what did we expect from her? A complete joke, a totally insane, psychotic woman. But she ended up getting, I believe it was about 5% of the vote. And when you look at the current rankings and understand, Katie Porter was the other far left candidate in this race, it actually could have been the case that maybe she's part of the reason Steyer got screwed out of the runoff, we hope, again, as well, which I would find to be utterly hilarious because that would be the most Katie Porter thing ever, right? Obviously, she had no chance of ever winning, but I did predict, okay, I basically said in some way or another, Democrat selfishness is going to screw them over somehow in this race. Now, we were hoping that would mean the two Republican scenario. Obviously, that didn't really come close to happening, and I said all along that was going to be a really long shot. However, it does appear that because Porter, despite having no chance to win, like the, bossy, crazy person that she is, said, I'm staying in this race till the end, and it's all just sexist men. She actually said this. It's all just sexist men who are judging my temperament and telling me to drop out and all of these things. In the end, one selfish, insane Democrat may have actually screwed over another insane Democrat, and that's my favorite part of all of this, right? You guys just do not have your act together whatsoever. But when you put it all together, apparently here is a full list of the results from last night. So, first of all, Hasan Piker endorsed Tom Steyer for California governor. We've all established it didn't go all that well because, unlike Hasan Piker, it turns out some liberals didn't want to vote for a billionaire because they at least claim to believe what they say about billionaires being unethical by existence. Okay, so Steyer, at the moment, it appears is going to lose. Let's hope, fingers crossed there. Nithya Rahman, same exact situation. Hasan Piker likewise had a total meltdown about Spencer Pratt. Basically, all he had to say there is that Spencer Pratt has crystals or something, as if, that's a left-wing attack line or something. But as I stated before, even before the election, you notice how Democrats don't have a real attack line on Spencer Pratt. They can never once address the actual arguments that are being said. So they just say, oh, well, he sells crystals. He was a reality TV star or something like that. And the one time Hasan did ever substantively address Spencer, he basically just said, oh, Spencer Pratt wants to kill homeless people. Not true whatsoever, right? He just totally made that up. The homeless people are dying right now. You know why? Because they're mostly fentanyl addicted drug maniacs who are just doing that stuff in public and nobody's actually helping them, right? Believe it or not, saying, oh, you can sleep on the street, you can continue your encampment is not actually helping these people. But even on top of that, Hasan, let's not forget, is the same guy who just got back from where? China? Yeah? Hasan, how do you think China deals with the type of, street zombies that are living around Los Angeles, So I always find it amusing when leftists will praise certain regimes and not even take maybe I don't know if I want to say good aspects, but the preferable aspects of some of these societies, right? And not even do the one-to-one translate. They don't even carry it over, right? But, okay, well, that's besides the point. So Nithya Rahman, that one is closer, but I would point out still at this time, is trailing about 8 points behind Spencer Pratt. That lead by Pratt has actually expanded last night. Now it is Pratt that is catching up to Karen Bass for the first place position, still 63% of the vote in. Let's hope that trend holds, but at the current moment, not looking too good for that Hasan Piker progressive endorsement either. And the other one here is Saikot Chakrabarti, however you say his name, but he was the leftist progressive candidate running to replace Nancy Pelosi in California's 11th congressional district. And that race, by the way, has been called for the other creepy weirdo, was it Scott Wiener? Anthony Weiner, Scott Wiener? I believe it's the Scott Wiener, one of the Wieners, right? So I'm not going to exactly say that that's all that much better. That guy is an insane far left pervert, but the progressives here basically wanted Chakrabarti because he was not affiliated with Pelosi and the Democrat establishment. And once again, they lost. So it seems to be the case progressives actually had a pretty terrible night. All of their people had awful performances. And by the way, while running against, you could argue, relatively weak establishment picks. I mean, Karen Bass, not exactly a political dynamo, not exactly all that popular. The same goes for Becerra. I mean, just look, we reacted to that guy on the debate stages. Does he come off as a strong, dynamic candidate? No. But still, right, despite that, and despite being California and a liberal electorate, that's really funny, Hasan. Why are your ideas not that popular? Are they going to say now it's because of AIPAC? Oh, that one's, AIPAC bought the election or something. First of all, you can't argue that when your guy was a billionaire putting the most money in the race, Have you considered your ideas are just not popular? Your brand of politics is not successful, right? And actually, as a matter of fact, much like I tell certain people on the right, fixating constantly on Israel and not issues that real voters actually care about is not winning. But, I'm sure it was actually Israel that took the election from Nithya Rahman and Tom Steyer, guys. I don't know. But nonetheless, so big picture here is what? Removing the Hasan Piker humiliation aside, I would say last night was a pretty strong statement by Republicans, even if the mail-in ballot games are about to come, because as you can see, at least nationally, what people took note of is, hey, Republicans did pretty strong in California. And by the way, what is it indicative of? After dealing with Democrat leadership, which is important, there seems to be this attitude for change, right? People want normalcy, restoring normalcy, that whole slogan that Democrats love to use. But that's actually true. They want normalcy in our politics. They don't want these insane, crazy freaks, right? That are obviously representing the pro-homelessness candidates and all that nonsense and, the current failed status quo of California. And that's a good statement. But the flip side, the other good statement is that, well, it doesn't necessarily mean it has to trend into Mamdani-style progressivism. Actually, the Mamdani-style progressives here got destroyed. And why was that? Because we had people on our side. We actually had an effective Republican opposition, especially in a place like Los Angeles. But Steve Hilton, not a maybe terrible candidate himself either. So you put that together and, look, it's California. It's kind of a bubble. There's localized issues there that are driving up Republican energy and turnout because people are just pissed off. But if this can translate to the midterms, right, this sort of sense of Republican energy, Republican overperformance, again, there's no way to get around the fact that it was embarrassing kind of for Democrats what happened last night, regardless of the final outcome. Then, it's not looking too bad. And if you don't believe me, just look at how Hasan Piker's reacting. I think that just tells you everything you need to know, right? But anyways, that said, guys, let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. And until next time, God bless and peace.